Thanks very much. So I'm a property tax agent. My job in industry is to interpret these taxes and look at the way they've been implemented across British Columbia and file appeals and litigate over refining the definitions that's provided in this legislation. And I have to tell you right off the I'm just going to sort of cover a bunch of random thoughts and tie it all together at the end. But what I'm going to tell you is we've been going through this new legislation and through the appeal process. And every time that we sort out a situation that seems totally what the government's been doing is amending the legislation. So they're amending the legislation every 2 to 3 months to button up any loophole that might exist in its application. So you can imagine as a property tax agent how life's been in the past year. We've increased the property transfer tax. We've brought in foreign buyers tax. We've brought in additional school tax, speculation tax, and empty home tax, all on real estate. It's been phenomenal, and I've been doing this for 28 years. A widely unknown thing is all these taxes are applied to vacant land and development land. And we heard from Andre that it can take a year or two to get a permit. Well, I'm going to tell you it takes 3 to 5 years to get a permit to build anything of substance to create some affordability in the form of a supply of housing. So it seems really unreasonable that they would decide to put all these taxes on vacant land, and it's more than doubled and tripled the property tax burden on development land. And as you know, costs get passed on to the consumers. So I did an analysis last year and determined that 26% of the price of a home is taxation and fees. And so if you're looking at how to create more affordable homes, the answer is not in taxation. So that was just sort of an intro. I guess I got home from Japan at 10 o'clock last night and woke up this morning to a bit of a storm of media. I did an analysis for StepUP. They asked me, how much has taxation impacted the real estate market? Well, I'm going to start out with saying it's not just taxation. I think we have to be fair in that regard. We've got a global economy. We've got global politics that are way offside right now, and we have the federal stress test. And I think the federal stress test is the first thing that came along. And I've been asked by the media all day, well, what should we do? Get rid of these taxes? What's your solution? Moderation is the solution. We were in a significantly slowing real estate market in January 2008 when they brought in the stress test. And the peak was back in 2016 and 17. People that aren't in the industry may not recognize that, and that stress test in early 18 was causing a major slowdown. And then to layer on the additional foreign buyers tax, the spec tax, the empty home tax, the additional school tax, as Andre has told you, completely crushed the demand in the market. It came off over 50%. So that's a big problem, and the analysis that I did is I looked at the BC assessment roll and came up with the values by municipality, and then we looked at the percentage changes by jurisdiction, and we ran some numbers. The range is a percentage drop on average, and this is blending together condos, townhouses, and homes, is between sort of 5 and 15%, and the loss per household is $50,000 to $75,000 in Langley, in Coquitlam, in Richmond. These are the new families that are buying new homes in 1 or 2 years have lost probably all of their equity in these new homes. So what people maybe aren't totally clear on is in this market we are seeing a significant decline in value in the high-end product and a much lesser decline in value in the low-end market. And in fact, there's still some municipalities that are seeing an increase in values in the low-end product. So, you have to wonder what we're doing here in the form of affordability. We know, most people in this room are from Vancouver, that we're paying additional school tax. Our homes are worth less, and we're going to pay a lot more taxes. There's nothing more affordable about our houses. It's no good to anybody getting into the housing market for a $7 million house to be worth $6 million. A $6 million house to be worth $5. That's not affordable housing. What's happened on the flip side is the low-end market's not going down or moderately going down, and what happens in that environment is a shift in property taxes. So at the low end of the market, you might not be paying the additional school tax, but as the high-end properties have gone down significantly more in value, that tax burden is going to shift over to the low-end market. So people don't know it yet because their tax bills are coming this week, but all those folks in their $1 million condos are going to pay a lot more property taxes this year. So we're less affordable on the high end, we're less affordable on the low end, and here's the big point: we haven't built any housing. We're still not building housing. And I actually think that's the biggest point in this conversation. It's not been widely talked about either. Housing starts are down 32% in British Columbia this year. 32%. And we heard what Andre said about the necessity for supply. We're well under supply in this market, probably by 50%, and we just dropped 32%. So every time there's a government intervention into the real estate market, you create a paralysis. Buyers don't want to buy, they think the price is going to go down, or they think the market's risky, so they sit on the sidelines. Sellers don't want to sell because they want more, they're not going to sell for less, the market goes into a paralysis. This is probably the worst paralysis I've seen in the marketplace in my 28 years, and what happens is you have people still coming to the province, and we have a pent-up demand that's going on right now. And the worst thing that's ever happened in one of these situations is a 32% decline in new housing starts. We're into a perfect storm here of a turnaround in market where you're going to see a significant turnaround, and it will probably be the biggest climb in real estate values we've seen in this province, and it might not be next year, it might be the year after, probably when the NDP's gone, and it's... But, I hate to say it, the sick thing about that is that, remember that 26% I talked about, which is the taxes built into your homes, it's going up. It's going up rapidly, albeit there's a decline in value right now. And when this market turns around and surges up, we're gonna maintain all those costs, all that taxation in the price of homes, and it's a really unfortunate circumstance for a government that says they're trying to create affordable housing. Probably one of the biggest concerns I have is the real estate industry generally. The real estate industry, and I'm talking about everybody from the sort of pre-construction consultants through to the developers, through to the designers, everybody involved in this marketplace is 25% of our economy is in real estate. We are $30 billion of the gross domestic product, and we're on hold, and we've stopped. People are canceling projects daily, on top of the decline in applications for housing starts. So it's not looking very good. I guess I'm going to end my speech with a lot of feedback that I get from a lot of people about what we need to do about this. And, I had an interesting conversation with Thomas Davidoff today because I like to get everybody's perspectives. I think that we should understand the left-wing perspective when we're talking from the right. And I said, look, Thomas, really, you would agree with me, we haven't created any affordability here. And he said, yeah, I get it. I said, so what's your answer? How are we going to get out of this? What are we going to do? And he said, well, he actually spit out his answer he told me 6 months ago when he started taking me on in social media. And he said, what we need to do, and I thought it's an interesting idea, is we come up with public sites, publicly owned land. We will define what we want to be built on them, whether it's low cost rental or small row houses or affordable units of any type. Define it, regulate it, and then put the density out for auction and let people bid on it. and take the money from that to subsidize the people to go into this affordable housing form. It's a very socialist view. I think it meets the government's mandate of providing social housing. That's a bit complicated, but it certainly is an idea, and I thought it was worthy of talking about. But bottom line is, taxing people is certainly not going to be the answer. I think there's two other things that particularly the people in this room need to be doing, and one is not to be intimidated by the left-wing radicals that we're seeing. I was disgusted by that billionaire bash that happened a week or so ago. I think that's very un-Canadian. It's not part of my society. And I think we need to speak up. You need to contact your politicians. You can't be intimidated to get involved in this issue, otherwise you're going to keep getting railroaded. And then part two, and this is going to be probably a more difficult thing for people to swallow, is you're going to have to embrace density. You're going to have to get over your NIMBYism, because we need density, and we need to put that out as the solution, and to fight it is not going to get us where we need to come to the table with densification options that get support from people in Vancouver. All right, so this is not just a Vancouver issue, but I think in Vancouver we can lead the way to a solution. And the good news today is now we're telling the story across the whole Lower Mainland, and more people are involved, and they're understanding that they're impacting people's livelihoods. And I said in the media this morning that they've impacted a generation of livelihoods, because if you bought a property in the past 5 years, you're in trouble, and if you're trying to sell your property in the next 3 or 5 years, you're probably still in trouble. So in my view, that's a generation of people and new home buyers that have been significantly impacted here, and I think we're putting that human story on this issue, and you need to be part of that. So thank you.